Driveway has to be 5 feet from any property line, right?
But how could you do that with the time?
Well, you can't,
Yeah.
and our code doesn't count.
Let us bring together a meeting for the town of Ocean View. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A little bit of housekeeping. Please check your cell phones and make sure that you have signed in on the paper at the desk. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Madam Solicitor, are we ready to begin?
I believe we are.
Okay. Would you like, Mr. Semino?
Yes.
Would you like to read the new business for us?
Did we approve the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. We do need to approve the agenda.
I move that the agenda be approved as written.
Okay, and we need approval of the minutes from the May 18th meeting.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And the same with the minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Excuse me, Mr. Semino, now it's your turn.
Application V447 submitted by the property owner developer, Mr. Robert Thornton, Silverwoods is zoned as a mixed-use planned community and located along Beaver Dam Road. This property owner is seeking a variance from Article 2, Section 187-11-B of the Streets and Sidewalks chapter of the Town Code, which requires that all curbing shall be delta Portland cement concrete type 1 vertical face with 8-inch reveal. This variance seeks to permit type 2 integral curb and gutter, commonly known as roll curb, in the proposed townhouse district as opposed to the type 1 vertical face with 8-inch reveal required by Article 2, Section 187-11-B. We'll work through the applicant's application and questionnaire.
Mr. Semino, are you going to give your comments now?
No,
Oh, okay.
after I read this.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we swore you and the town clerk are prepared. Yeah. Okay, at this time I'd like to swear in Mr. Semino and the town clerk. Mr. Semino and Madam Clerk, have you both swear to tell the truth before these proceedings today?
Yes.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, have all notices with respect to this matter been sent out in accordance with the code? Yes, they have. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Semino.
Okay, in order for the Board of Adjustment to grant a variance or a special use exception, the applicant must be prepared to answer the following questions. Number 1, uniqueness. Do you have a unique circumstance or condition such as irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of the lot size and shape, or exceptional topographical or other physical condition peculiar to the property? If so, please explain. The applicant responded, the hardship results from the property's narrow townhouse villa lot, coupled with the desire to have 2 off-street parking spaces on each lot. It should actually be 2 ones. Yeah, off-street, my bad. The narrower townhouse lot permitted aggregating the open space into a common area and preserving environmental resources, as contemplated by the MXPC's purposes, while avoiding multifamily structures and parking lots other than MXP development might otherwise involve. B, is there an exceptional practical difficulty due to such unique condition? Given the property's narrow townhouse villa lots and the desire to have 2 off-street parking spaces on each lot, there will be exceptional practical difficulty in installing the code standard curbing, particularly in light of the numerous transitions and the needed for ADA compliance. 2, possibility of development. Can the property be developed in strict conformity with the zoning ordinance without a variance? If not, please explain. Not without exceptional practical difficulty, because of the numerous transitions and the need for ADA compliance, as well as seeking to promote the purposes of the MXPC. Is the variance necessary to enable reasonable use of the property? The applicant responded yes, as roll code is the norm for the community's character in the residential areas, and the narrower townhouse lots permitted aggregating the open space into a common area and preserving environmental resources as contemplated by the MXPC's purposes. The property is zoned MXPC. Its express purposes and intents include creating a superior living environment through unified development and permitting mixes of residential dwelling units and compatible commercial uses, where innovative design is encouraged and flexible dimensional standards are allowed in order to minimize infrastructure costs. These concepts of unified development, innovative design, and flexibility to minimize infrastructure costs support the use of a continued roll curve in the community, including on this property. 3, has the difficulty been created by the applicant? If not, please explain. The applicant responded, no. The narrower lots are a function of the townhouse villa buildings, which are planned instead of less desirable multifamily. Added to the difficulty is the planning preference of 2 on-lot all-street parking spaces. Number 4, effects on the surroundings. Will the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? The applicant responded, no, as the existing portions of the community have rolled curb. B, will the variance substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use for development of adjacent property? No, as the existing uses within the community mirror what is requested here. The commercial areas that will be planned as part of the MXPC are not impacted. C, will the variance be detrimental to public welfare? No, as the rolled curve facilitates the 2 off-street parking spaces on the townhouse lots, thereby promoting the land use development regulations purposes of lessening congestion in the streets, which in turn helps to secure safety from fire and other dangers and promotes public health and general welfare. Phase 1 of the community already has a rolled curve. The continued use will not have a serious or detrimental effect and instead will promote uniformity. Number 5, the extent of the variance. A, will this variance represent the least modification possible to the regulations at issue? Yes. This is simply a request to substitute a different type of curving, not to eliminate curving. B, is the variance necessary to afford relief? Yes. C, will the variance represent the least modification possible to the regulations at issue? Yes. All right. The town has some comments on the request. Section 187-11 curve. A states curb shall be installed along both sides of the street. B, all curbing shall be Del-Dot, Portland cement, concrete type 1, vertical face with 8-inch reveal. Construction of curbing shall be in accordance with Del-Dot standard specifications 2001 or latest addendum. The applicant has requested to place type 2 integral curb and gutter, commonly called roll curb, throughout the townhouse district. The town eliminated the roll curb and gutter and initiated vertical face curb requirements throughout the new development when the code was updated in 2010. The town has, in many communities, granted the use of type 2 integral curb and gutter in several communities, including Silverwood's Phase 1, since the code change in 2010. The Office of Planning and Zoning is currently suggesting changes to the town code that will include the use of type 2 integral curb and gutter and has no objection to this variance request.
Madam Chair, or Mr. Lober, do you have anything to add? Madam Chair, are we prepared to call the applicant forward?
We are. Gentlemen?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
You have to be sworn in.
Oh, certainly.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth before these proceedings today?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Seth Thompson. I'm an attorney with Parkowski, Gerken, Swayze in Rehoboth, Dover, and Wilmington. Here with me as well is Mike Ryman of Becker Morgan, the engineer on the project, and David Jock with Beezer Homes, who's the builder on the project. We're here representing the developer, the applicant, and I want to thank Mr. Simino for reading that. Having had to watch a video recently of myself, it's always nice to not hear my own voice. But I do want to hit on a few of our large points here, and I think it just makes sense. I mean, number one, as I was driving down, I was thinking how kids these days, not kids, younger adults these days say, well, what would that look like, right? And that's a fair question. What are the practical effects of a decision? And here it's helpful that we have phase one. So we brought a board. It's a recent picture from yesterday. You can see because it had rained previously. But you can see what phase one's rolled curb looks like. So hopefully that's helpful. Maybe in the legal parlance, that's precedent. It sounds like some other communities in the town also have been granted that variance. But let me kind of walk through some specifics about Silverwoods Phase 2, or the townhouse or villas district, as we've been referring to it. Specifically with respect to this variance, we think that the rolled curb promotes uniformity. It's not going to have a detrimental effect on the neighborhood. Really, that's kind of the standard for the neighborhood. And when it comes to the lots themselves, I do think it's important, first of all, the standard itself refers to the narrowness of lots. And here we're talking about townhouse lots, right? So the homes are going to be connected. The town has indicated a preference for having 2 off-street parking spaces on the lot, which makes a lot of sense. That cuts down on congestion. That avoids us having to put, ancillary parking somewhere else, that sort of thing. So people get to directly access 2 cars on their property. But because these are townhouse lots, there's not going to be a lot of space between driveways. So what you end up with, even worse than that particular picture, would be the roller coaster effect of a high curb and then dropping down for the next driveway. A high curb, dropping down for the next driveway.
We can't see your
Yeah,
display.
yeah, please.
We can bring it out.
There you go.
We have it in front of us, have black and white, but it's much easier.
And I did bring this.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's what it rolled.
So hopefully you can kind of envision if that had been a flat front standard curb, that it would go up and down between the driveways. Those are single family detached homes. It would be, even more pronounced in terms of going up and down with respect to the townhome lots, because they're just going to be narrower lots. So those are our practical difficulties dealing with the particular structure of the lot. We do think it keeps with the purpose of the MXPC, which is one of the factors that the board is to consider. Are we promoting your town code purposes? Are we promoting your comprehensive plans purposes? We think the answer to that is yes. The MXPC is really designed so that you can aggregate residences and then leave a larger open space for purposes of just aggregating it so that there's a larger common open space, preserve natural resources, that sort of thing. So the idea is, rather than having kind of smaller space, if you will, sprinkled throughout homes, you get to have this larger area that's probably more productive for people. So the townhome lots really kind of, unfortunately, dictate the 2 parking spaces taking up much of the front. So that's what prompts the rolled curb request here. We don't think there's going to be a substantial detriment. Again, there are plenty of examples in town, it sounds like, where that hasn't been an issue. I did see one comment that was provided to the board that talked about impervious surface. And I don't expect people to kind of go into the nuances of land planning, but the impervious surface is really kind of a different issue, right? So like the impervious surface is the lot coverage issue, and we're compliant with the MXPC ordinance for this particular zone for it. So with respect to the rolled curb, I think maybe that comment was made on both variances, but we did just want to spell out the fact that, again, we're compliant with the lot coverage requirements. A couple other things that we think are beneficial. It would avoid tripping hazards, right? So if we have the roller coaster curb going up and down, we think people are going to be more likely to trip over a curb that in smaller sections is more pronounced. Same thing with ADA compliance. It's just going to be easier, we think, to keep the rolled curb so that you don't have those greater distinctions and therefore problems in dealing with ADA compliance on the transition. Again, the character of the immediate vicinity, we're not introducing something new to the community or to the town itself. And then finally, with regard to the proposed zone, in addition to the comp plan talking about flexibility, this zone in particular is supposed to promote, you know, some design ingenuity, so that you can preserve those natural resources. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I have Mr. Ryman here to answer any technical questions, since the roll curbing is a little bit more of a technical issue. But if you have questions for me right away, I'm happy to answer those.
Just an observation from where I'm looking. It is one continuous rolled curb. There is not a section, like for this car, and a section or any type of barrier between the two. Yes.
Right, there won't be a barrier. It'll look like this, but with
That's
smaller
what-
grass area, if you
Okay.
will. Right.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Gentlemen, questions?
None.
I have one. You mentioned compliant with American with Disabilities. Is the roll curb itself compliant, or do you still need some kind of other transition for wheelchair accessibility?
I will turn that over to the engineer just to make sure.
Does he need to be sworn in?
So,
Yes.
what we're referring to when we talk about the ADA compliance is along the slope of the sidewalk itself. There are criteria for the maximum slope that you can achieve. So in this particular case, these are single-family homes, so you can see the gap between them are much larger. But on the townhouse lots, that gap between driveways would be so short that in order to get the sidewalk back up to the curb height, because what happens is the sidewalk's gonna go up to match the top of the 8-inch curb, and then it's gonna go back down. It would actually be impossible to meet the maximum slope requirements and achieve that. So it would not be able to meet ADA between the driveways and be able to raise the sidewalk up
Okay.
with the curb.
How about getting from the sidewalk out to the street?
That actually isn't required to meet ADA. The ADA compliance occurs at the intersections where the ramps would be placed, and if you can picture those little dimples with the what we call truncated domes, that is where the ADA compliance crossing happens, not out of each.
Not out of each individual driveway?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, gentlemen?
I have a question for Ms. Semino. What went into the decision in 2010 when they updated the code not to include this type of curbing? Is there a reason for it?
It's my understanding that prior to Mr. Lober being here, prior to me being here, former town engineer recommended the change to the curb at the 8-inch reveal, that it would allow us to have one pavement overlay cycle and increase the width of our pavement instead of milling 2 inches and putting 2 inches back. What we now do is what we call taper mill. When we mill an overlay, we taper mill it 2 inches next to the curb and only a ½ inch out of the roadway, or 0, depending on what the roadway surface is. If it's micro surface, we mill a ½ inch off. If it's just straight bituminous, then we'll go from 2 to 0. We'll zero out. And that'll allow us to build up our pavement section and also increase our crawl slope, which eliminates ponding that we have here along a lot of our roadways because it's just so flat. And, you know, at the end of the day, our goal is to achieve 1% in our drainage. And 1% over 100 feet is 1 foot. So there really isn't much room for water to move. So that was the thought
At the time.
when they changed it.
Okay. Questions, gentlemen? Any other questions? No?
Anything for Mr. Ryman?
No.
Thank you all for your time and attention.
Madam Solicitor, may they make the motion?
I want to do clear 2 things. Mr. Ryman, I know you've already testified, but I just want to swear you in.
That's right.
Did you tell the truth before the board in these proceedings today?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. It's for public comment.
Yeah, well, yes, I was going to say, since we have 2 people here, ladies and gentlemen, do you have any public comment, or would you like to speak about for or against this situation? You have to come forward. You're sure? It's your chance to shine and to be on television. Okay, fine. All right. So.
Yeah, leave people online.
Yes. Are there people online?
Do that
Oh, we
anymore.
don't do
Okay.
that anymore. That's been stopped, okay. So then we're set to make a motion, gentlemen?
Madam Chairman, I find that a literal interpretation of the code will result in exceptional practical difficulties for the owner, and there will be no detriment to public good or neighboring properties, and that the close proximity of townhouse drives makes this type of curb desirable and more efficient. I find that the applicant's request for curb type variance is consistent with the character of the neighborhood and will not be detrimental to surrounding properties, will not hamper vehicular or pedestrian traffic, and otherwise complies with other standards of law. I move that we approve this variance and permit a rolled curb in the townhouse district.
Okay,
I second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. All right. Now we go to our second one.
Yes. Application V 448, submitted by the property owner and developer, Mr. Robert Thornton, Silverstock LLC, Silverwoods is owned as a mixed-use planned community and located along Beaver Dam Road. This property owner is seeking a variance from Article 2, Section 187-10-A, and Article 16, Section 140-100-B, 12B of the Town Code. Article 2, 187-10-A states, driveways shall not be placed within 5 feet of the property line. Article 16, Section 140-100-D, 12B states that driveways shall be a minimum of 5 feet from any property line. The development proposes to construct driveways on 161 townhouse lots and will be installed less than 5 feet from the property line. The applicant requests a reduction of the 5-foot driveway setback to 1.5 feet. In order for the Board of Adjustment to grant a variance or a special use exception, the applicant must be prepared to answer the following questions and address the following factors. Number 1, uniqueness. Do you have a unique circumstance or condition, such as irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of lot size or shape, or exceptional topographical or other physical condition peculiar to the property? If so, please explain. The applicant responded, the hardship results from the property's narrow townhouse villa lot, coupled with the desire to have 2 all-street parking spaces on each lot. The narrower townhouse lot permitted aggregating the open space as contemplated by the MXPC purposes while avoiding multi-family structures with far fewer lots and parking lots other MXPC developments might otherwise involve. B, is there an exceptional practical difficulty due to such unique condition? If yes, please explain. Given the property's narrow townhouse villa lots, there will be exceptional practical difficulty, really a virtual impossibility, in providing the 2 requested one-lot, all-street parking spaces of a property width for these townhouse units without relief from one of the side yard setbacks for the driveway. Number 2, possibility of development. Can the property be developed in a strict conformity with the zoning ordinance without a variance? The applicant responded no, because of the needed width of the driveway for 2 one-lot spaces. B, is the variance necessary to enable reasonable use of the property? The applicant responded, yes, 2 off-street, one-lot parking spaces are normal in the community, and homeowners would reasonably expect to be able to park 2 cars in front of their building. 3, has a difficulty been created by the applicant? If not, please explain. The applicant responded, no. The narrower lots are a function of the townhouse villa buildings, which are planned instead of less desirable than multifamily. Adding to the difficulty is the planning preference of 2 on-lot, off-street parking spaces. 4, effect on surrounding. A, will the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood? The applicant responded no, as the existing portions of the community have similar driveways. B, will the variance substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use for development of adjacent property? The applicant responded no, as the existing uses within the community and the commercial areas that would be planned part of the MXPC are not substantially negatively impacted. There is, however, a benefit to the community in promoting less congestion on the roads due to off-street parking. C, will the variance be detrimental to public welfare? The applicant responded no, as the setback variance facilitates the 2 off-street parking spaces on the townhouse lots, thereby promoting the land use development regulations, purposes of lessening congestion in the streets, which in turn helps to secure safety from fire and other dangers and promotes public health and general welfare. Additionally, the townhouses avoid less desirable multifamily while still allowing for the aggregate common open space for the community. 5, extent of the variance. Will the variance represent the least modification possible of regulations at issue? The applicant responded yes. The request is only for one side of each driveway. Even then, the subject setback would not be eliminated, so owners and residents will still have clearly delineated driveways. Additionally, only Unit A models would require a 1.5-foot setback, while other models will allow for 2.2 feet. B, is the variance necessary to afford relief? The applicant responded yes. Otherwise, the 2 parking spaces cannot be placed on the lot. C, will the variance represent the least modifications possible to regulations at issue? The applicant responded yes. Please see above. So, we've read the application, reviewed the plans, and offered the following comments. Section 187-10 of the Town Code, driveways. A, the minimum width of a driveway shall be 10 feet and the maximum width shall be 20 feet for the area within the limits of the town right-of-way. The total width of the driveway within the limits of the town right-of-way on a single lot shall not exceed 20 feet. Driveways shall not be placed within 5 feet of a property line. Section 140-100-D, 12B as in boy, driveways. Driveways shall be a minimum of 5 feet from any property line. The developer proposes to construct driveways on 161 townhouse lots that will be installed less than 5 feet from the property line. The applicant requests a reduction of the 5-foot driveway setback to 1.5 feet. The Office of Planning and Zoning has reviewed this request, and we've determined that the code does not contemplate the application of these requirements for townhouses. Townhouses are permitted by town code in the R3 townhouse and multifamily district. It is the opinion of the Office of Planning and Zoning that for this reason, we do not oppose the granting of this variance request.
So Mr. Semino, I'm reminding you from before that you are under oath in these proceedings. Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, did all notices go out with respect to this variance application? I wanted to clarify that for the record.
May I ask, pictures behind you on the floor, are they part of this presentation?
We can certainly do that. Is it?
Just if you have, if you have. Up
Can you,
yeah.
yeah, all right.
So Mr. Thompson, you want to reintroduce yourself for purposes of
I
these
am still
proceedings?
Seth Thompson, and at least as much as I know, I am still employed by Parkowski, Gerken, Swayze. And I also swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
So
This is a picture of what we were what Mr. Semino just discussed and read.
that's right, and it's always, I don't know, maybe it's the non-engineer in me, but it's always helpful to see kind of on the ground versus kind of the aerial footprint, if you will. And actually, the product is there's a development that has the product not too far from here in Millville and Bishop's Landing. So, but that's kind of what we're dealing with. And I appreciate the planning department going through and coming to the conclusion that the 5-foot setback from the side plot lines probably doesn't make a lot of sense for townhomes. I think your code allows a 20-foot townhome, and then to have the 2 parking spaces would be the 20 feet. So it would be illogical. You couldn't really have a townhome with 2 parking spaces then. So it would almost force you into a position where you're doing the ancillary parking lot for the second second.
Mr. Ryman, would you, just because you're there and we're here, just point out exactly where he was what he has been discussing and what?
That is not an accurate representation
Oh,
of
this
the
is-
townhouses that will be placed on this unit, is it?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's right, yeah,
Those are 28 foot, and that's,
yeah, those are the townhomes, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so, I don't know, is it okay to jump in, Mike Ryan?
Yes.
Working for the record, yes, still under oath. So, you know, the common line between the townhomes is here, and so that's where the property line would be. And so to what the point that Seth was trying to make, and I think reinforces Mr. Semino's point, that the code doesn't contemplate the 5-foot setback or driveway from the side lot line, because your code allows for 20-foot townhomes. We're required to have 2 parking spaces, off-street parking spaces on the lot, which would be 20 feet. So if you had a 20-foot wide driveway and a 20-foot townhome, you'd have 0 side space between the driveway. It would be impossible to achieve both, which is, I assume, why the town came to the various conclusion there. So what we are asking is a reduction of that to 1.5 feet. That tends to occur here. You can see where it lines up with the garage. It's a little bit wider on this side. We have 28-foot wide townhomes. They're actually wider than the minimum the code allows in this particular case. 28-foot wide minus a 20-foot driveway only leaves 8 feet combined on each side. So would not be able to achieve the 5-foot for this particular layout. So.
thank you for that clarification.
Question?
Mr. Neuter?
So, those are one-car garages, correct?
Correct.
So, the way they're positioned, to have even a 10-foot driveway in front of that garage door, you cannot ever meet the 5-foot setback requirement. So it's not the fact that it's a 20-foot driveway, it's the fact that any driveway would not be able to meet the 5-foot setback.
That is correct. And it's very typical of townhome, townhome with garage, whether it's a single car or a double car. The garage tends to be on one side of the townhome, the entryway tends to be on the other. So you're correct. In either scenario, it would be impossible to meet the 5-foot requirement, most likely.
I'm assuming that on the other side of the street, you're building townhomes also, is that correct?
In
Some cases.
locations, yeah.
So if you did have townhomes on the other side of the street, you virtually have no on-street parking unless you put a parking space somewhere in close proximity. Am I correct in that?
Correct. It is, we do have some off-street parking, because when we went through the concept plan process and the preliminary plan process with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we did provide some off-street parking to meet the town code requirements. So there's I believe, and correct me, Mr. Simmons, if I get this wrong, but there's 2 parking spaces per unit, but then there was some additional parking. 10%.
But it would be away from, like I'm assuming if I'm looking at this, it would probably be somewhere over here on the other side, like this?
So it would be it would have to
Yeah,
be.
remote, right, thank you.
Correct. So, yeah, to your point, in this central location, you have townhouses across the street. We did try to put some off-street parking where we could, to try to, meet the 2 on-lot parking spaces plus the additional 10% that's required. But the town, through the planning process, did require for this site, for this plan, that we have 2 off-street parking spaces.
Got it.
Any other questions, gentlemen? A motion needs to be
We
made.
need opportunity. Are you done with your presentation, Mr. Thompson, or do you have anything else to add?
The only thing I was going to add is, just to clarify, it's not for every unit, but the 1.5 feet is the smallest, right? So certain units would still provide 2.2 feet of a setback, but we just thought it would be easier. I mean, in theory, everybody could opt for unit A, for instance, and that would be the 1.5 foot. The other thing that I think is important to note is it's really only a variance on one side. The other side will still have the 5-foot setback because of the off-center driveway. Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Madam Chair, we have public comment.
Okay. Okay. Are you here? Could you just speak up, please, so we, thank you. Okay,
So for the record, there's no public comment.
okay. Did we have a motion? We didn't have a motion. We need a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I find that a literal interpretation of the code will result in exceptional practical difficulties for the owner. There will be no detriment to the public good or neighboring properties. I find it's in the best interest of the town and the townhouse residents to allow for a two-car drive per townhouse unit in the contemplated townhouse district. And the current code does not, in my view, account for a proper setback for a two-car drive in a townhouse district as applied to this application. I find that the applicant's request for the setback variance is consistent with the character of the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to surrounding properties, will not hamper vehicular or pedestrian traffic, and otherwise complies with other standards of law. I move to approve the application for the variance to allow for the reduction of the 5-foot driveway setback established by the code to 1.5 feet for the Silver Woods Townhouse District contemplated by the application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Now, I need,
Madam Chairman.
adjournment.
Madam Chairman,
Oh, excuse me. One,
I'd like to have the floor for a moment.
certainly.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Lawless.
This is my last meeting as part of the Board of Adjustments. I'm moving out of the town limits by about 1.5 miles. So I will not be eligible to be a participant in these things. It's been my privilege and honor to serve this town since I've been here for the past 17 years.
Wow. And please let the minutes note that we appreciate all of his work, his endeavors, and your thoughts on all of our occasions. And best of everything to you and your wife.
Congratulations.
Now,
You will be
Mr.
missed.
Senator.
Madam Chair, as a town employee and one of the town's 3 directors, I want to take this time to recognize Bob for his contributions to our town government. Bob has previously served on the Board of Assessment, the Board of Adjustment, and many folks don't know that Bob was a member of the town council at one time. So while we certainly appreciate your service to the town and all that you've done in helping make Ocean View the great small town that it is. So thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Now,
Thank you.
Now I need a motion to adjourn. the
I
meeting.
move we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried.
I move we